break this on for us, John Busnich joins us. He's a journalist, activist, and political analyst, joining us from Belgrade. And we also have Greg Simmons, researcher at the Institute for Russian and Eurasian Studies, who joins us from Uppsala, Sweden. Welcome to you both. John Busnich, I'll start first with you. The warning that comes from Russia in terms of its asset being seized by the U.S., when I first read it, I thought it was old news, but apparently it's not, because we know the assets they. Process. Yeah, I mean, we know about the assets they seized in terms of their currencies, right? Of which that was a big push for Russia to just de-dollarize. But is Russia really meaning it this time, making this statement publicly like this?
Well, the fact of the matter is that the United States has been cranking sanctions up against Russia for a series of years, and the United States is now attempting to try and make a big deal about the next step. But Russia has been prepared for this for at least 10 years in advance, and the degree to which Russia could be hurt by America is much smaller than the degree to which America could be hurt by Russia. There is a great deal of American oil company infrastructure still in place in Russia. And if the United States seizes Russian assets across America in other areas of the country, then Russia will be justified to take permanent control over all U.S. oil production facilities inside Russia and elsewhere that Russia can get their hands on.
When we take a look at, Greg Simmons, the fact that Russia has made this announcement, I'm curious as to how this can actually happen. I mean, is this decoupling actually something that can occur realistically?
Well, it's been occurring, and it's been occurring for some time, and I'd say it's been noticeable since at least 2014, but accelerating now. The decoupling has been mainly led by the West and the US in terms of its misguided belief that sanctions will have any kind of effect that will make Russia change its policy in terms of Ukraine. However, I mean, we're seeing the effects. It's destroying the United States and the West.
Another statement coming from Russia here, John Busnich, is of quite importance. Russia believes that the U.S. is now becoming directly involved in the Ukraine conflict, or the Russian special operation. When it makes a statement like that, what goes behind that statement? I mean, is it just for public knowledge that Russia is saying that?
Well, no, I think that there was a general presumption that there were a large number of ethnic Ukrainian American soldiers infiltrated into the Ukrainian armed forces. In other words, people who had dual citizenship or whose parents came from Ukraine. They were trained in the United States and they were deployed inside Ukraine. Now, of course, it takes some time to capture some of these people, to interrogate them, and to prove their actual physical origin, whether they were born in the United States or whether they're carrying U.S. identification. But now, given the time that this conflict has continued, and given the resources that the Russian side has in being able to interrogate captive soldiers and to further investigate the origin of many of the mercenaries who are fighting for Ukraine, there's no doubt whatsoever that there are American military personnel in Ukraine and that the United States is attempting to increase their physical presence there.
Finally, Greg Simmons, when you, at some point this conflict has to end, what's going to happen once that occurs in terms of the way that the relationship or lack of a relationship there will be between Russia and the West, but in particular the U.S.?
I don't think there is going to be much of any relationship left, and why would they? The US-led West has proved itself to be utterly unreliable. It's proved itself to be working actively against Russian security interests and all these other points. I mean, it's going to turn to east in terms of this so-called global South. I mean, the US has, over these last decades, systematically worked at trying to contain and weaken Russia. So there is no basis for any kind of positive relationship, even if you have slightly more or less tensions. And maybe you might have slightly less tensions by November this year with the coming midterm elections in the United States, where the politics of war is going to perhaps force the Democrats' hand in trying to tap back the level of conflict and its consequences.
Thank you very much for that. Greg Simmons, there, researcher of the Institute for Russian and Eurasian Studies. And thank you, John Bosnich, journalist, activist, and political analyst from Belgrade. And with that, we come to an end for this news review.